到20分钟，然后就会有 Q&A 这样。准备开始。
Hello. Hello. Brad. Brad is here today, very actively. Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming here today on a Saturday. So we actually try to make it a bit shorter than was said before because we don't want you to spend your entire day with us, even though we really appreciate that you're coming. So basically all of us from Raiden Network, from Melonport, from Aragon, and MakerDAO, we decided to go on a trip together because we are all projects that are very known in Europe, but we weren't sure how known we are actually in Asia. So we decided, okay, it's a good idea to form this group together and go to different cities that seem to be of importance to us. So we started in Tokyo, we went to Seoul, we went to Shanghai and Hangzhou. Now we are here, really excited to see what the Ethereum community is like in Taiwan. And then after this we will go to Hong Kong and Singapore. And then I think we have a really nice overview about the markets that we consider most valuable. Quick question, who of you knows MakerDAO? Yeah, that's quite a lot. So this is actually something that we have found out, that MakerDAO already has a really, really good presence. I guess this is partly thanks to QJ, who will also present today because she's really active. She's based in Shanghai and she's doing an awesome job. Then who of you knows Raiden Network? That's also quite a lot, yeah. It's always good if the own Raiden Network team is raising their hand, yay, I know my project, woo! Who knows Aragon? Wow guys, you are really informed, that's good job. Who knows Melonport? It seems like it's always the same people who know Melonport, it's really cool. And who knows Gnosis? Cool, great, that's super nice. So yeah, Gnosis basically, we are working on 3 different projects. We are mostly known for prediction markets, but we are also working on a multi-signature wallet, which will be a mobile phone application. And we are also building a decentralized exchange called the Dutch exchange. Who of you knows our prediction markets? Okay. Who of you knows our decentralized exchange? And who knows our multi-signature wallet? And that we are building one for mobile phones now? Oh, maybe I should have focused on that. Well, next time. Okay, prediction markets. I will just give a quick wrap-up of that because I guess most people know that. Prediction markets, what are prediction markets? It's basically a way of giving you access to information of something that is going to happen in the future. So to give an example, if there was something you would like to know, for instance, the price of a house in a specific street in Taipei because you want to buy your own apartment. So you want to know when is a good time to actually buy this apartment. Should I do it now? Or is the price actually going to decrease, so it's better to wait? Or is the price going to increase? So even though I don't have the money right now, it would be worth it to take a loan to buy it immediately because the price is going to increase so much that it's still worth it to buy it right now rather than waiting until I've saved all the money. So what would you be doing today is basically, you could either do some research online or you can ask your beautiful, sexy looking broker about what is going to be the price. But he might lie to you, right? Because he wants to sell you the apartment. So he wants to give you the incentive to buy it right away because he's gonna get profit out of it. He's not gonna tell you, hey, the price is going down, you should wait. So yeah, and then there's also something called house price calculator. This is something that could also give you information on what is the value of a property. But it usually is only focusing on the value as of today and will not give you any insights on on how it's going to change over the next month. And even if you manage to get information from different sources, you wouldn't know which source to trust because they might give you different information. And then how would you judge which information is the right one? So this is when the prediction markets comes in place. If you want to gather that information, if you want to know what is going to the price of the property you're interested in, you can set up a prediction market. You can ask the question, will the price of this property by 2019, 1st January 2019 be increased or decreased? Or, so that would be like yes or no. Or you could also set up a scalar market, basically asking for the exact price of the property. And so yeah, again, a wrap up on what are prediction markets. Prediction markets, they make outcomes of a future event tradable. By giving, so basically you set up a market, you have different outcomes. The outcomes could be binary, meaning yes or no. It could be outcomes covering different events. It's always necessary that you cover all possible events. Or like I mentioned before, it could be a scalar market. So if it's a price of a property, if it's the price of a stock from the stock market, you can set up upper and lower bounds to define which is going to be the exact price of something. And yeah, and basically how it works, or part of why it works, it's because it's collecting the wisdom of an entire crowd. So if you look at the example, basically, if you have a box full of golf balls and you want to know how many are in it, if one person is guessing, it's probably wrong. If two people are guessing, it's probably also wrong. But if an entire crowd is guessing on it, usually the average is quite correct. Yeah. And then, like, the price of the different outcomes that are being traded, the price is then reflecting the probability of this event to happen. So again, how does it work? If you're interested in building a prediction market, you come up with the question, you cover all possible outcomes, you have to fund the market, and you have to choose the oracle, which will ultimately resolve the market, basically telling you what has been the right outcome. So how it would look like is basically, again, this is the setup question. Question would be, what will be the gas price? You cover all possible outcomes. This is the second part is basically when the trade is beginning. And then the last step would be that the oracle that you picked at the beginning will give you the information, the correct information, what has been the right outcome. Different use cases for which you can use it is one big one is information discovery. So like I said, if what's going to be the price of a property. It could also be something about, in this example, it's about construction work because we like to use that example because it's $1 million industry, so it can really show you how much money can be saved by using prediction markets, by just being able to assess in time if something is gonna open up on time or not, because there's like millions of money, millions of euros or whatever currency behind the market, and to actually have information might save an industry a lot of money. Another way prediction markets can be used is to do decision making. So if you are interested in deciding on which CEO you would like to hire, you could set up a two-step market and basically define should CEO A, B, C be hired, and then set up a second market saying what is going to the effect on something. Let's say, for instance, what is going to be the effect on the stock market price. This is a bit more complicated, and I think we wanted to keep it short, and there's a few other things that I wanted to say. So if you're interested in the concept of future key, it's best to just come and talk to me. I skipped this. Is there any developers in the room? Okay, that's really cool. Because we just launched a challenge called Gnosis X, and it's basically for developers to build on top of us. So we provide an SDK, we provide support, we have a really nice forum on GitHub. If you have any questions, you can every day there's developers responding to your questions. And basically what we would be doing is you would come up with your own idea of what could be a cool prediction market. You can basically come up with any sort of idea, like the examples that I just gave, where you could just look at, okay, by when is going to be the first autonomous car be driving in wherever city, or whatever, it could be anything that you find interesting. It's the only requirement basically that we have, that it falls below one of these topics, science and research and development, token diligence, or blockchain project integration. So whatever sort of blockchain project you know, if it would be interesting to include a prediction market on something, you could just come up with a really nice use case and build it. We give you everything that you need to build it because we have like this really nice SDK package and all the support that you need. And also the knowledge of Solidity that is required is relatively low, so you don't need to have too much background in blockchain. Obviously it would be nice if you have somebody who can provide a nice interface also, like, so that you basically work on a really nice package. And you have time until August to come up with a nice prediction market built on top of us. And you would submit it, and you can win $100,000 US worth of tokens if you participate. So even if you don't make the first prize, we will still support the projects that we like. And also for each of the named categories, all the 3 of them, for each of them, there will be a first prize. So there's 3 times in total a winning team. So 3 times $100,000 US. And again, there's also second and third prizes if we like the other projects. So if you're interested, please come and talk to me. I think it's a really, really cool initiative. And we have also really cool judges. So it's one of our founders, and then it's the founder of Consensus, Joe Lubin, and then there's some also very known researchers like Robin Hansen, who came up with the concept of future keys. So it's actually really, really good lineup of judges. How much time do I have left? So, okay, here I get 5 minutes. Okay, come and talk to me. I can give you all the access to information that you would need. Since I still have some time left, I also wanted to present our decentralized exchange. You're probably thinking, okay, there's heaps of decentralized exchanges now on the market, right? I mean, there's like one popping up here, one popping up there. Why are they building another one? Like, there's so many of them already. So we basically believe that we are solving some of the problems that usually all the other decentralized exchanges have. To explain that better, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of how the other decentralized exchanges work. First of all, maybe also to mention, our decentralized exchange is purely, for now, it's purely for Ether and ERC20 tokens. That might change in the future, but this is how it is built now, and it will actually launch in a couple of weeks. So the auditing has been done. There was no major things that were found. So right now there's a public bug bounty program, and then in a couple of weeks it will be live completely. So like I said, to explain what are the advantages of ours, we like to explain what are the disadvantages of others, to like see why, in what way our mechanism is different and which problems it's solving. So if you look at the traditional exchange, whether centralized or decentralized, they usually are using order books. That means whenever somebody submits an order, it gets automatically executed, immediately, right? As long as it's matching a different order, it's immediately executed. And another issue is actually that whatever order price you're submitting, this is also the price that you're paying. So how is ours? What are the problems with that basically? First of all, something that has most exchanges as a big problem is front running, right? That somebody is basically being faster than somebody else and taking advantage of that. This problem is magnified if you bring an exchange on the blockchain, on the decentralized level, because then you have suddenly more time, because you have the blockchain, in which people can do front running. And also, for instance, somebody wants to ensure that his order is being executed before somebody else's, he could just be willing to pay a higher gas price. And also, I mean, there's also more parties involved who actually could be doing front running. Think about the miners who actually decide on which transaction is going to be mined. So you have more parties and more time to do front running. Then, something else which is problematic about the order book model is basically that it can happen that there's overlapping orders, because if several people are submitting different orders at the same point of time, they might be overlapping, meaning somebody is selling an ether for a higher price, somebody else is willing to buy it for a lower price, selling for a lower price, and then people can take advantage of the spread in the order book and do arbitrage trading. Then another problem that we see is basically that for illiquid markets, if somebody submits a relatively large order, he can easily fulfill all the other side of the order book and this way dramatically drop down the price of the token. And then last but not least, this might be a bit critical because obviously some people do this and see a big benefit of this, is high frequency trading. This is something that we, however, believe is extracting value off the market. So for a normal user who's not trying to, who's not a high frequency trader, it's a problem that high frequency traders exist because they are extracting value off the market. So what do we do differently to not have these problems? We are basically making use of two mechanisms. The first one is that we batch auctions together. So in comparison to the order book model, we don't execute every order one by one, but we batch all sell orders together and we batch all buy orders together. Then the second mechanism that we are using is the Dutch auction mechanism. Some of you might be familiar because some of the ICOs were done this way. You basically start at a really high price, and then the value of the token drops over time, and people submit their order whenever they think that the price for the token is right. And then ultimately, when the entire batch of tokens has been auctioned off, this is then the selling price for which all the participants in the auction will receive. So every seller and every buyer will ultimately receive the same price. This is just to make it more visual, to easier understand. Again, first, it's basically for two steps. The first step is everyone is submitting the token that I want to sell, token A. And then in the second step, people who are willing to buy token A for token B, they submit their orders. And then, ultimately, once the entire pot of tokens has been auctioned off, the auction is cleared and everyone receives the same price.
So some of them, when they return, some of them will be different.
Sorry?
Because they have the same price.
Yes.
So somebody will need more token than necessary.
No, what happens, they don't give it back. Now you can look at this price function. What happens is basically, the orange line shows you the price of the token. So in this way, token A is being sold for Ether. So the price of token A is reflected in the orange price function. You can see it starts at a very high price and then the price falls over time. And then down there you see the submissions of Ether. To answer your question, there are three ways how the auctions can end basically. Number one would be people submit their Ether, and at some point of time there is enough Ether submitted so that these two functions meet, and this is the point in time where the auction ends, right? But how it happens, to easier understand basically the second option how the auction could end, is that somebody submits orders here and then nobody else is submitting orders anymore. So what happens, this function would remain the same, right? Whereas the second function, the price function, is falling, and at some point they would meet again. Meaning, these people who submitted their Ether would still pay the same amount of Ether that they were willing to sell, or to spend to buy token A, but they would receive much more token A than they would have received if the auction would have finished here.
Okay, but there's an assumption that token A is well, you could have more, you have a fixed amount of token A, correct?
Yeah, but maybe could I finish for a bit and then we can come back to the questions? Cool. And so basically, this is the two options, and the third option would be if the token has zero value. then the auction will end after 24 hours, because after 24 hours the price function is reaching 0. And then you know, but this would only happen if the token has no value. So yeah, when does an auction start? The earliest when it starts is always 10 minutes after the prior auction of the same token pairing has ended. Also, there needs to be at least 1,000 US dollar worth of funding in the auction to be executed, to start. And yeah, what's also the same token pairing, the opposite token pairing, is always starting at the same point of time. And it's also what I mentioned before, you start at a very high price to ensure that if there's volatility in the market, the price of the token is still covered, which is why we would always start twice the price of the prior auction. When it's ending, I already responded, and yeah. So basically, one more thing, the length of the auction, that depends on the value of the token. Again, it's like designed that it would, that you start with twice the price. And then after 6 hours, the price function is reaching the value of the token that it had in a prior auction. So if the token value remains the same, the auction would close after 6 hours. If the value has increased, it would close earlier, and if the value decreased, the auction would take longer. So this is obviously solving front running, because if you look at the sellers, they have all the same amount of time to submit their sell orders, so they have enough time. There's no incentive for them to submit their order before somebody else. For the bidder, the same thing basically. The price function is designed in a way that the price falls after when the price is right, more or less after 6 hours, the price function falls relatively slowly, which means that even if you're not willing to spend a very high gas price at this point in time, you can still wait for the gas price to decrease and then submit your order. And again, sellers and bidders, they're all paying the same price in the end. So there's no incentive for them to do front running. And also for us as the exchange, we can't do front running because everything is based on smart contracts. I have to speed up a little, so I skip that slide. Yeah, one more thing, it's also very good for tokens that are volatile, like to basically if you have a token that is not very liquid, so for very liquid markets, you batch all the tokens together, so you don't have the risk of selling off the entire part of an order book. It's also really gas efficient because all your orders are executed, not if you look at other exchanges. This one, I think the screenshot is from ECTAsia, so what happens a lot of times, you need to match another person's order, or your order is not executed for whatever reason, then you always pay gas costs, right? And it's actually a lot of money to always submit your orders, then maybe you have to cancel your order, and again you're paying gas for that. Or your orders just never matched and you still spend gas on that. So obviously, since all our orders are executed, since they're batched together, this is not happening. And then last but not least, what is also really cool about it is that basically there is no off-chain signing required, and no receiving of orders off-chain and submission to the blockchain, which means that different smart contracts can interact with each other. If you have a smart contract for which it is needed to exchange a token for a different token, they can automatically do it. And also, you can always rely on the price in this auction to be a fair price. Because there is no better incentive for people participating in the auction than giving price what they believe is the true value of the token. Which is ultimately one of the reasons why we decided to build this exchange, because we believe that this mechanism is a really good way to always find a fair price of a token, and so we ultimately wanted to become also an on-chain price oracle, which we then would also need for our prediction markets. Okay, that's it.
I think we have time for one question before we move on to the next presentation. Anyone have a question?
But you can also come to me in the break, maybe, if you want to speak.
No break.
There's no break?
There's no break.
Hello, hello.
Yeah. Cool, that's all.
I'm just curious, like, at the end of a prediction market, how do you ensure that oracles giving you the right answer?
I think that's a really good question. I love it. So basically, obviously there could always be the risk that there is still a mistake, right? I mean, in the future we want to have decentralized oracles, but even they could be wrong at some point of time. So what we want to do, it's not been built yet, but the goal is to basically, whenever an oracle decided on the outcome, gives price what the true information is, there is a trial period for people to claim that the oracle was wrong. And then the entire community will vote on whether the oracle was true or wrong, and then if the oracle turns out to be wrong, it will be replaced. Everyone else come and talk to me because I think... So apparently you still need some time. Is there any other question?
How is the prediction market different from anchors?
Augurs? Okay, another really good question. So basically, it changed over time because I think both of us changed a little bit our strategy. How it is currently different is that we are providing an automated market maker and they are not. Why do we provide an automated market maker? It's basically because everyone participating in an auction, whenever interacting with the auction, basically you're creating an entire set of outcome tokens, right? Because all outcome tokens together will always be 100%. Because the likelihood of the event is 100%, right? If you have 3 different outcomes, the likelihood of each of the tokens will change over time depending how people tried and whether the thing is correct. But ultimately, the entire value of them together is always 100%, which is why whenever you interact, you need to create an entire set of outcome tokens. And then what happens if you are participating? Obviously, you don't want to hold all tokens, right? Let's say it's a market with 3 outcomes, A, B, and C. You believe A is correct, then obviously you only want to buy A and you don't want to buy and keep A, B, and C. However, how the mechanism works is that you always need to create all 3 tokens, right? So you need to ensure that there's something or someone who's buying the other parts of the other outcome tokens so that you actually really only hold the token that you want. And of course, to provide this liquidity, you need someone buying that off. And in this case, in our case, this is why we built the automated market maker, which will always buy back the tokens that you are not interested in. And Augur currently doesn't have that.
Thank you, Anna. Next up, Yannick from Brainboard.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about the Raiden network. I will not focus on how it actually works, but rather what it is, how it compares to other scaling solutions in the Ethereum network, and where we are in the development process and what the next steps are. My name is Yannick. I'm a developer at Brainboard, which is the company behind the Raiden network. I'm actually not involved in the development of Raiden itself, but so it's possible that I can't answer every of your questions. Sorry? Closer? Oh, yeah. I see. So I hope I can answer your questions. I may not be able to, but I will try. So what is the Raiden network? The Raiden network is basically for Ethereum what Lightning in the Lightning network is for Bitcoin. It's a payment channel network on top of the Ethereum blockchain. It provides fast, cheap, and scalable off-chain token transfers. So as you all know probably, one of the biggest problems of blockchains is the scalability problem. It can only handle a certain amount of transactions. And that's why the solution that Raiden uses, or payment channels use, they take transactions off the chain and handle them off the chain and only use the blockchain as a settlement layer. And that means that they can be very fast because the blockchain, we don't have to wait for new blocks to arrive. They're also cheap. We don't have to pay transaction fees to the miners. And we're not limited by the number of transactions the blockchain can handle. What is Raiden not? It's a very specific solution for token transfers. It's not a general scaling solution. So if you have a smart contract and want to scale that one, you may not be able to use Raiden. You can use Raiden if you want to transfer tokens, and if these token transfers do not have any immediate effect on the any immediate on-chain effects, because the blockchain will not know that the transfers have happened. But that's what you can use Raiden for. We also have MakerDAO. MakerDAO is a little bit different. It's basically the little sister of the Raiden network. It's not a network of payment channels, but every channel is only one from one to another, or any transfer can only go from one person to the other one, whereas in the Raiden network, the transfers can be routed through this network. And that means that MakerDAO, the applications in which MakerDAO can be used are a bit limited. For example, you can use it for basically only many-to-one scenarios. When for example, if you have one service provider and many users of the service provider, then they can use MakerDAO to pay that service provider or some app store or something like this. So it's a bit limited, but at the same time it's much more easy to implement, and that's why it's already available. You can use it on the mainnet today if you want to. So how does the Raiden network compare to other scaling solutions? One of them is sharding. The idea behind sharding is basically to split up the main chain into many different sub-blockchains called shards. And these all share the same security, basically. And which means that it's a very generalized scaling solutions. Every contract that can run on Ethereum now can also run on a sharded blockchain. But it has some disadvantages compared to the Raiden network because of this. You again have the latency issue that it takes time for blocks to arrive. You have to pay transaction fees, and also all transactions are public, which is not necessarily the case for the Raiden network. And latency issues, especially a problem if you want to do communications between shards. And there's also Plasma. Plasma is great as well. It's also a generalized solution. The idea here is to have a separate blockchain again, and but basically you don't care. You use the blockchain like you would, and at any point in time you can exit to the main chain. So you inherit again the security of the mainnet, meaning you can have, and because it's a separate blockchain again, it's very generalized, but you have still again the latency and fee issues which we try to solve with the Raiden network. There's the liquidity network. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's also a payment channel solution, and they make their life a little bit easier by enforcing or having a different network topology. They have centralized hubs, whereas we don't have them, or we try to avoid them in the Raiden network, because it's basically a centralization risk. They need to be always online, and if they're not, because they're malicious or because they get attacked, then the network will stop. So that's why we try to avoid that. And we think that's, at least I think it's the point of blockchains, is to avoid these centralization issues, and that's why what I think is an advantage to have it there. So where are we right now? The team is working on implementing the Raiden network. We started releasing regularly last year in September, where we started with the dev preview, and now we arrived at version 0.3.0, the swimming goat release. Problems right now are which they are working on. What was it? So first, big topic, spec. They're trying to spec out the protocol, the smart contracts, all components, how they interact with each other, so that for many reasons, mainly so that other people can come, look at the spec and evaluate if the security of the system, and also third-party implementations can come and look at the spec and implement it in parallel to us in other languages or for other platforms, for example. So that's what they're working on. And also crashing of nodes. if you run Raiden, you have to run a node, and if it crashes, you want to be able, for whatever reason, maybe because your computer crashes or the power shuts down or whatever, you want to be able to recover from that. You don't want to forget about transactions you made, because then yeah, you potentially lose money, and that's what's one of the topics right now. Also, Raiden used to be handled in a single repository, now it's split up in many. We have the main repository at the top left here, and we have a separate repository for the contracts. We have a separate repository for auxiliary libraries, which can be used by other projects. We have the spec, and we have two helper services for they are not necessary for Raiden itself, but they make life for light clients way easier. I will talk about them in a second. Another problem which the team is working on is the message transport layer. So it's all about off-chain transactions in the Raiden network, so we need a way to relay messages between the nodes without touching the blockchain. And unfortunately, there's no scalable or viable solution for that right now, which is decentralized. The Ethereum Foundation is developing Whisper for quite some time, but it's not ready yet. It does not have the desirable properties that we need. And therefore, we, as an intermediate solution, we are currently switching to a federated transport layer called Matrix. You may know it because the Riot chat is using the same infrastructure. But once a Whisper or a better solution comes available, we will be able to switch very quickly to that. So I just mentioned these helper services for light clients. One of them is the pathfinding service. We have a network of payment channels, and if you want to transfer or make a transfer through this network, you need to be able to find, to know which path you want to use. And that is very hard to do in a decentralized way. And it's much easier if you have a global view of the whole network and know everything about it. That's of course not scalable, but as a temporary solution to quickly provide a usable network, we can use these pathfinding services. They will be third-party services, watching the network and keeping track of all channels, and then light clients can choose one or more of these pathfinding services, ask them what's the best path between me and my target node, and just ask them for good paths. So that's also, they also work on that right now. And another thing, the monitoring services. So for state channels in general, it's necessary to monitor them because the counterparty can always close. And in that case, you need to be able to go to the main chain and react to that, to challenge that closing. But that's unfortunately, the monitoring is for light clients it's not a very good user experience. For example, if you run your node on your phone, you always need to be able to, be connected to the internet. And therefore, for light clients, we want to provide monitoring services, which basically light clients can outsource that task to these services. That's another project, and for the general roadmap, that's how it looks like. We have this recoverability. So the next milestone basically is the red milestone with the recoverability issue, the transfer layer. We want to implement it for that, and we also refactoring our smart contracts to make them easier to read, easier to audit, and also reduce the gas costs. And we also have a couple of core protocol changes we want to make. And for the next milestone, then the ECTAsia milestone, we want to audit the smart contracts. We want to audit the core protocol to make so that users can be sure that the system is safe. We also want to work on usability and documentation. And in parallel to all these things, we want to, at ECTAsia, want to be finished, or want to have this monitoring and the pathfinding service in place, so that it's a usable system. Here's a list of our developers working on that. We have Augusto, Konrad, Jacob, Ulo, Paul, Joseph, Loredana, Georg, Andre, and Lefteris mainly. I'm not sure why I'm on that list. As I said, I'm not really working on that. And yeah, we are always looking for new developers. If you happen to live in Berlin or Mainz, probably not many people here, you could apply. And also looking for a community manager. So if you want to work with us, you can send us an email. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Yannick. Is there any questions from the audience regarding Raiden? All right, cool. Then let's move on to the next presentation. Thank you, Yannick. Never mind, we have another question.
What is the Raiden security guarantee? Is it based off the mainnet?
Yes, so in general, with state channels, with payment channels, you lock some tokens in a smart contract on the main chain, and then you do off-chain transfers. And these off-chain transfers consist of messages, signed messages, balance proofs, that's how we call them. And if your counterparty does something wrong or does not react anymore, you can take the latest balance proof sent by your counterparty, go to the main chain, to the smart contract, and ask them to unlock your coins. So basically, you don't, if something goes wrong, you go to the main chain and you get your tokens. So yeah, you inherit the security of the main chain.
Okay. And in what way is your privacy better than sharding?
So in sharding or in blockchains in general, all transactions are public. You can see them, they're on the chain. Whereas ideally, if you do these off-chain transfers, the blockchain doesn't need to know about them. The only people who need to know about these off-chain transfers are you and the party you send funds to. So if you don't close this channel immediately, no one will know about them.
But once you close the channel, you will go on-chain.
Yes, then you know about the latest state of the channel, but not all states in between.
Okay, one more question.
Hi, Yannick. You just say that Raiden network can only handle the token transfer, not the smart contract, because the deployment should be on the main chain. But I just saw that there's a replical Raiden smart contract. So what can you shortly produce the difference between the smart contract and the Raiden smart contract?
Yeah, so this repository is not about. It just contains the smart contracts which handle the Raiden network. So
it's just a breach, some kind of breach, or
no, it's just part of the implementation of the Raiden network. It does not mean that you can implement smart contracts on Raiden.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yannick. 大家好，我叫王汉森，我是 Melonport Head of External Relation。虽然我是中国人，但是我在德国长大的，所以我的中文不太好，所以今天的 presentation 我得用英文弄。德文也行，就不能弄中文。Perfect. Okay, yeah, thank you all for coming as well from my side. It's okay, I don't really use slides anyways, it's just our logo. I needed one slide for the second, more technical part of the presentation, but for now it's good. Yes, so today I'm going to share with you a little bit what we've been working on for the past 2 years. Melonport was founded by Mona and Reto in July 2016. Back then it was just the two of them. And in February 2017 we had our token sale where we raised 2.5 million Swiss francs in just under 4 minutes. We kept it there. We said that's all we need for a 2-year project. And the sale was over before I could even invest in it myself. Yeah. And February 2018, so 1 year after the token launch, we deployed the first tokenized, decentralized fund on the Ethereum blockchain. And today I'm going to share a bit our road to that mainnet release. So what do we do at Melonport? We basically build a tool for people like yourself to effectively manage a portfolio of digital assets. Yeah? And here's the first point. It really is just a portfolio of digital assets. We have no integration of fiat money, no integration of asset classes like stocks, bonds, commodities. I mean, I guess you can buy digits nowadays, but other than that, nothing. And you know, that's cool right now, right? I mean, the digital assets market is about 400 billion, but it's relatively small. In order for Melon to become really, really valuable, we need one thing to happen. And that's the main assumption we made when we came up with Melon. And that assumption is that one day, all assets will be tokenized. Yeah? We believe that in the future, all stocks, all bonds, all commodities, futures, everything will be stored on the blockchain. And the reason is simple, right? It says storing information. Blockchains are better when it comes to storing information and ownership rights, and they're also more effective when it comes to transferring that value. If you ask me how long it will take until everything is tokenized, I don't really know. My personal guess is it's going to be rather sooner than later, because if you look at the historic rate of adoption of new technologies, the rate has increased, right? How long did it take us all to have a personal computer at home? Maybe 40 years? Cell phones already was much faster. In 20 years, most of us had a cell phone. And nowadays, companies like Uber and Airbnb, they can take a huge share of the market in just 2 or 3 years. So yeah, we believe that in the near future, everything will be tokenized. Once everything is tokenized, you'll be able to manage those assets as well on Melon. And then it will become really, really useful. So who is Melon for, right? As I said, Melon is a tool for people to manage a portfolio of digital assets. If you manage your own money, if you have your own crypto portfolio, you don't really need Melon, to be honest. All you do is you send some money to an exchange, you do the asset allocation, you buy what you want, and then you withdraw it to your wallet. You have a rough idea of how much money you made, when you put in, and how much you take out. Very simple. Melon becomes useful for you when you start to manage people for other people as well. Yeah? When you start to manage money for other people, that's when you enter the asset management industry. And how it's done currently, there's I would say 3 main ways of managing assets, right? There's advisory, there's managed accounts, and there's investment funds. Advisory is very simple. I'm a professional, I tell you what to buy, you make the trades yourself. That system is already quite optimized, not much to do there. The second way of asset management is managed accounts, which means that me as a professional, I have access to your bank accounts and I make the trades on behalf of you. And that's how a large amount of asset management is done nowadays. But it's not very scalable. Let's say I have a strategy, right? My strategy is I buy the top 10 tokens, 10% each. If I were to manage accounts, I would have to execute the same trade on every single one of your accounts, or from every one of your wallets. So it's not a very scalable solution. And so that's why we come to the last type of asset management, which are investment funds. Investment funds, they are simply pooled investments. So everyone here would send your money into one vehicle, that will be the fund, and me as a professional, I have access to that fund and I can trade on behalf of that. And it's difficult. When it comes to investment funds, you don't really hear much about them. What you hear about is you hear about the star traders, yeah? The hedge fund managers that made 20% return, which is super great in the normal world. In crypto, that's like a Monday. You hear about that, but what you don't hear about is the work that's done underneath, right? All the back office operations work that's done in order to sustain investment funds. And the company that usually does that is called a fund administrator. And what they do is they handle all the investments coming in and out. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine if I give you the task to invest a portfolio for every single person in this room, right? We're like, I don't know, 30, 40 people. If everyone invests at the same time, the same amount, that would be easy to calculate. But what, like, if people invest over 3 years at different times, different amounts, you have to exactly calculate how much is the fair share everyone gets, right? You don't want someone who just invested a month ago to reap the benefits of someone who's invested for 3 years, or vice versa. If someone lost money over the last 2 years, you don't want to share that with someone who just invested. And that's just part of the work that's done by the fund administrator. They also do the audits, the risk management, they calculate the NAV, the AUM, all of that. And in the current asset management industry, it's vastly inefficient how they do it. Yeah, I'll just tell you one story. I used to work in a Swiss family office before I joined Melonport. And I used to buy funds. I had a fund mandate, and I actually had to print out a piece of paper. I had to sign it physically, and then, I'm not joking, I faxed it over to the fund administrator to subscribe to a fund. Yeah, that's just one example, right? Also, like settlement takes at the fastest rate 3 days. Usually it takes weeks to get your money back, or even month or quarter. And because this process of just maintaining an investment fund is so cumbersome, that leads to a very high barrier to entry. Yeah? In my family office, we didn't accept any clients with less than $4 million liquid money. Most hedge funds, they won't take your money if it's less than $100,000. And the reason is just the process of onboarding a new client is so cumbersome that it's not worth it for me to manage their money for $100. Yeah? And then what does it lead to? That leads to the fact that only the people who already have money are the ones that can get the services from professionals to invest money. So they are the main ones who can benefit from the growth of the economy. That's one problem, right? High barriers to entry. Also, the asset management industry is very intransparent. The Queen asked famously in 2009 after the financial crisis, how come everyone missed something as big as a financial crisis? The crisis that affected the entire globe, and no one saw it coming. And the reason for that is very intransparent. You don't know what the investment bankers do with the money. Actually, some prop desk of investment banks, they used to give the assets they didn't want, pass it on to the clients, and then make profits themselves. So if there wasn't a blockchain, that wouldn't be able to happen. And yeah, that's the second problem, right? Transparency. So there's a bunch of problems with the current asset management industry, and we at Melon are trying to fix it. What we're doing at Melon is we're building a fully decentralized tool for people or for large institutions like investment banks, hedge funds, and so on, to set up and manage investment funds in digital assets. Both our front end and our back end are hosted and executed on decentralized applications. The back end is on the blockchain, of course, on Ethereum. The front end is on IPFS. And how we fix the problems of asset management is we are replacing the majority of the tasks performed by the fund administrator with smart contracts. So we're doing the same things that the fund administrators did before, manually, with paper and fax, and with employees, but we let the smart contracts do them. And what it does is it rapidly reduces the costs, which enables like even small investments of $100 to be feasible. And the blockchain takes care of the transparency, and it also reduces operational risks. So let's have a look at how we do it. I think I use this microphone, it's a bit better. So this is a design of the Melon protocol, right? In the middle we have the Melon fund. The Melon fund is just a set of smart contracts which acts both as a custodian and as an accountant of the fund. You can actually imagine it a bit like a wallet. Yeah? A very, very sophisticated wallet with far more functionality than just sending money around. So this contract is where all assets are held. It also does all the accounting. It can literally, the whole room, everyone can invest in this fund. And the smart contract, they calculate exactly how much of the profit share everyone gets. It calculates the AUM, the NAV, the share price, and so on. Before I continue, I'm actually explaining how Melon works now from the viewpoint of someone who wants to become an investment manager, someone who manages money for other people. So you have a wallet, you connect your wallet to the smart contract. Now you can control the funds inside of them. As I said, investors can invest simply by sending Ether to the public address of the fund, and the smart contracts take care of all the accounting. The main thing you do as an investment manager is trading, of course, and you can trade on Melon directly through our front end with the exchanges. We are first integrating decentralized exchanges. The mainnet, that's a funny choice we make, because all the liquidity right now is actually on the centralized exchanges. But the main advantage of using decentralized exchanges is that you don't have the counterparty risk, right? You don't have to give up your private key. Because when you trade on Aragon or Coinbase, you have to send your assets over to the exchange. They have your private keys. Don't know how careful they are. We've heard plenty of stories where they're careless. And the first exchange that we integrated is actually from the MakerDAO team, or ECTAsia. But we're going to integrate all of them after another. So yeah, you as an investment manager, you have control over the funds. Investors can invest easily in the fund. The smart contracts do the internal accounting. You can trade on the exchanges directly. There's two more main modules that are missing for complete fund structure. And before I get into them, I want to quickly address the price feed. Right? In order to get a consolidated overview of your portfolio, you need reliable price data. And how the normal crypto funds do it today is they just take the price data from the exchanges. But we can't do that because the data is not on the blockchain. So in our first idea, we had different price feed operators. I think we have Crypto Compare and Thomson Reuters. But then during one of our competitions, we found a security flaw, and that's why we decided to change it. So what we do now is we have one canonical price feed. And how it works is that anyone who wants to, they can stake Melon tokens. Out of the ones that stake, the top, I think 7 or so we take, and then we take the median price of the person who stakes. Actually, one step back. So anyone can stake to become a price feed operator, to bring prices to the blockchain. And out of the ones that stake the most, we take 7, and then we take the median price. And that will be the price that we use for each asset to calculate the portfolio value. Yeah, lastly, the two modules we're building is compliance and risk management. If you're managing large amounts of money for other people, you need to have a license. We can't, and you also need to do KYC for your clients. You need to know your customer. You can't just have a random person invest. By default, Ethereum doesn't restrict investments. So what we did is we built a compliance module where you can integrate any KYC provider you want to, similar to how the exchanges do it, and they can whitelist Ethereum addresses. So only if you use the compliance module, only addresses that are whitelisted can invest in your fund, and that's how you can restrict it. And lastly, the risk management module, in my opinion, the easiest way to understand how we take advantage of smart contracts to automate processes. In the old family office I worked for, we had a fund mandate for one of our clients, and we had certain investment restrictions. Let's say no more than 10% for a single position, or volatility target between 5 and 10%, or always execute at the best price. And you can actually encode those rules onto the blockchain, and then they would behave kind of like pre-trade checks. So let's say, in order to manage my risk, I say I don't want too much exposure to a single asset, so I'm going to implement the 10% rule per portfolio, in the portfolio. Then let's say you have 8% of Ether, and you're trying to execute a trade. Let's say you have 8% Ether, and you're trying to buy 5% more. Then before you execute the trade, the smart contract calls the blockchain and it asks, if Hansen executes that trade, will the 10% limit be surpassed? If yes, reject the trade. If no, let it through. That's just one example, right? We're going to do that with every single rule of risk management and encode them with our smart contracts. So that was Melon in a nutshell. Maybe lastly, I want to share a little bit with you why we do what we do. we don't want to have a fight with the current establishment. We don't want to say, hey, use Melon instead of State Street or Citco because we're better. I think our technology is better actually, but that's not the point. What we want to do is we want to build an alternative. Right now you don't have an alternative. If you have large amounts of assets, you have to have them with a bank. Right? If you have $5 million, you have to have them in the bank. The other options you have under your bed, and then it might be stolen from you. And also you can't get rid of it, right? How are you going to get rid of $1 million worth of Apple stocks quickly? You can't if it's under your bed. And Melon is supposed to be, another way you can do it. Bitcoin was the first alternative. Now you suddenly don't have to have money in your bank anymore. You can have it in a Bitcoin wallet. And Melon is just the next step to it, right? Now you can have a large variety of assets in a Melon fund, and you can directly trade from them with exchanges. You can have other people interact with it. And that, in my opinion, is very valuable. Of course, we are open source, like most other projects here. We also, when we started Melon, we said it's intended as a 2-year project. So the Melonport team, that's where I work, and Mona and Reto and all our developers, we're building the Melon protocol. But once we finish building it, we're going to roll it out, and we're going to take a step back. And we have no special privileges over it anymore. Melon will then run by itself. It's ownerless, and since it's ownerless, obviously we can't take any fees. So the Melonport team doesn't earn a single cent in revenue from this, and of course also permissionless, right? Right now, if you want to set up a fund, you have to talk to State Street or BNY Melon. When you want to use Melon, you can just do so. Yeah, no one can restrict you. We can do it. We can do it either. Thank you very much, everyone. I have time for 1 or 2 questions. I got it.
As asset manager, I would assume you are more susceptible to front running. Or is that the correct assumption?
Yeah, I think front running is a big problem. Actually, I'm not an expert on that. I'm not sure how we would solve that. We are actually integrating Gnosis Dutch exchange, so maybe you're front running a big concern of yours. You can just use the Dutch exchange. Yeah.
And just curious, would you be comfortable using Gnosis for your price feed?
Gnosis can certainly stake like any other company. We don't. There was actually our only centralized feature of Melon was a price feed where we had Tons Reuters. We're not going to have one. We're not going to have a price feed, an independent price feed operator. We're going to leave it canonical, so anyone can stake. Gnosis can do that too, but they don't have any special privileges over anyone else. Yeah. All right, thank you. Next up is Brett and Jorge, or just Brett? Brett and Jorge from Aragon. 中文讲吗？
我不要用中文讲吧，所以中文水平也跟汉斯一样的吧，不那么好，对不起啊。So both Jorge and I are here from the Aragon team. This is actually both of our last stops in Asia, so we've been really excited to come over, but we thought we'd end it with a bang. Both Jorge and I, we love EDM, and we thought, both Jorge and I, we love EDM, so we thought, what's the best way to do this? And that's to do a live set together. So Jorge and I, we're going to mix it live, and we're going to hopefully enjoy this. So I'll start by talking about what Aragon is and our vision of what it might become. This is the only slide in Chinese I can muster. Aragon, really at the heart of it, is about empowering people, empowering their freedom, empowering their ability to be sovereign and to create value for themselves and to the people that they want to collaborate with. Now today here it's been really nice, but in China, it's not so nice. There were boundaries, or there are boundaries to what human beings can do, and there are national jurisdictions, there are national boundaries, there are other boundaries that stop people from doing what they truly want to do. And at the heart of it is usually a centralized party, some centralized form of risk, some centralized form of limits. But Aragon wants to kind of take those away and explore how we might do that going into the future, how we might remove those limits and allow people to really empower themselves and be free. And at the heart of all this is a DAO. It's a decentralized organization that people can collectively and collaboratively work towards and govern. We have Bitcoin as the first DAO. It was good, it was cool, but I don't know how much you can really do with it, actually. And then we had the DAO, which was also cool, but not so well. And then we had Aragon. And Aragon 0.1 was released last year in March. And it was kind of this first exploration that Jorge and Luis, the co-founders of Aragon, thought about organizations on the blockchain. So it had a number of features. It basically took what a normal corporation was in the world and tried to put it on Ethereum. You had share structures, you had vesting, you had etc. But it was very closed. It was basically just, okay, let's see all the functionality that a company might need, and let's put it on and then forget about it. But after it was released, it took us about a year before the last couple of months to get out a new version. And in that time, we've really rethought what governance means, what collaboration and organizations mean to people. And just the thought of a company is really, really closed. It's one form of governance, it's one form of collaboration, but we don't want to put limits on human creativity. We want to give them a tool to allow themselves to do whatever they want with it. So to build up to that, we started building an entire operating system on Ethereum called Aragon OS. And we view this operating system kind of in parallel to how a traditional operating system works on hardware. So on hardware, you have resources, physical resources that a software operating system allows you to manage and operate. On Linux, it's like, okay, can I use the RAM? Can I use the GPU? Can I use the CPU? But in an organization, what resources mean are human and monetary capital. So for organizations, it means who can make decisions, who can be affected by decisions, where is this money going, and who has access to this money. And so Aragon OS was a way to kind of encode arbitrary generic logic to control these types of resources that organizations may have on Ethereum. And it's open as well, it's on GitHub, so you can please feel free to check it out. So yeah, two main parts that Aragon OS really has as a good thing for people to start using is that it provides upgradability and governance outside of the box, out of the box right away. So if you started smart contract development today, your governance over the smart contract is usually really limited. It's like, is owner. That's great, I have like one owner. Like what about a group of people? Do I need to deploy multi-sig? What if I want more complex, arbitrary, automated ways of making decisions? And that's where Aragon OS really comes in to allow you to parameterize and create generic rules about who and what can be accessed inside of an organization in terms of human and monetary capital. It also supports upgradability because we think that we're never perfect, we're always going to have bugs, we're always going to have better ideas in the future, and so it's best to say, you know, things are going to change, and there should be a path for improving after you've decided on something beforehand. We're going through security audits right now for Aragon OS. When we do, we'll release the results. But as soon as that's done as well, we'll also start pushing out Aragon OS to mainnet. We currently have it deployed on Rinkaboo. Now this is kind of what we've been leading up to in this last year is Aragon Core 0.5. This was the entire rethought vision of what Aragon would be. And we kind of redid everything in this to make it open and extensible for everybody to use. Before, what we had were very closed modules that was just like fundraise, control who got your tokens, etc. But now we have something that basically allows anybody to plug in their own applications. We've included very basic applications to mimic our 0.3 release. But now it's like, if you want to make a Miro app, if you think our voting system is too basic and you want to make more complex applications on top, you can feel free to do so. And it's really easy to make your own if you're a developer, and then plug that into our application. So now we're going to go through a live demo, and Jorge is going to be joining us to control this live demo. How do we do that? Oops. Oops. Code. All right. It's right All right, so we're going to start from the start and create basically an organization for this meetup.
Is it going to be a democracy?
Well, what do you guys think? Should it be democracy or it should be dictatorship?
Yeah, let's do
democracy.
Do you assume any structure within the flag structure? Is hierarchical?
That's totally up for you to decide. We have no, we're just building the tool to allow you to decide how you want to control your own organization.
So we'll pick ECTAsia
Yeah.
name.
Fortunately, the font's a little small with the DPI. So we've got ECTAsia as oh, nice, very nice. And then we have kind of a setup for how this governance is going to happen inside this DAO. So support is the percentage that's needed for a decision to be binding. That's at 50% right now. Minimum quorum is the amount of people who have to vote yes inside the total population, and the vote duration will set to 3 hours. You have TPE or something, you know. All right, and then with that, basically we send a few transactions. MetaMask doesn't pop up, of course. So we'll send 2 transactions. One basically to mint a token for this organization, and this token basically becomes the governance token. This is the one that you use to have a say inside this organization when you vote. Yeah, we'll wait maybe 30 seconds to see if it actually.
Does it cost to vote?
Unfortunately, right now, yes, it does cost. We've designed this voting system as a really basic, like, dumb showcase of what you can do with voting. But ideally, this would be off-chain. It would be free, it would be super scalable, but there are limits to the technology that we're currently facing, like all of us probably know with scaling in general, that we're working towards. But we haven't solved that, and we're working towards that. But that's totally open, right? Because our voting system is like this, but if you have a great idea to build off-chain computation on TrueBit, or on a sharding chain, or on a plasma chain or something, you can do that. It's open to you. And you can make a better voting app than we have. We'll wait for Ethereum. Bear with us.
It requires, right now, it requires 2 transactions for creating an organization. We keep it at below 8 million gas, more or less, or 8 point something. And this is quite a feat because behind the scenes, almost like 10 contracts were deployed and a very complex system was set up. But we have done a lot of work to minimize the gas impact of this.
Ooh, wow, it worked. Oh boy. That's wonderful. No Bill Gates failure needs to be shown here. All right, so we're going to load the apps. Try it again. It takes a while sometimes. And this time it should load. It's taking this time. So what we're doing right now, actually, in terms of explaining this, is inside Ethereum, we have created an organization and installed a bunch of applications that control logic for this organization. The front end for all of these, jump over here, to see that there's a token manager. It's kind of small, but there's a token manager. There we go, nice. Token manager, voting, and finance. All of these are contracts on Ethereum, and all of them have a front end installed in IPFS. And so when we click on one of them, all right, try the token manager. It's loading from IPFS. All right, so we basically have, we'll get into the architecture afterwards, but you'll see we have one holder, and this is the current address that my wallet is, but we can definitely mint another person. So we can mint another token and give it to somebody else. We'll just pick, you can use any of these random accounts up here, Jorge. Yeah, I just pulled some from the last block. Perfect. But I mean, realistically, you would do this for all the people inside your meetup group. Okay, so this is interesting because we tried to mint a token, but when we tried to mint this token, it said, hey, look, you don't have total control over this organization. Like, you can't do this by yourself. What you have to do is you have to create a vote to say, now I'm going to give this new token to somebody else. And so let's go ahead and trigger this vote. We'll sign this transaction. And all in one step now, it's going to create a vote. A voting will be made to say, I would like to add another member to my organization. If we now go to the voting app, it'll take a bit. We have to wait for Ethereum again for this vote to go through. to subscribe. But essentially when it does load, what it'll say is, okay, you were the only member inside this organization, you had to create a vote, but hey, you voted yes for it, and so it's gonna pass. And when it does show up, we'll be able to see a vote that passed that said, let's mint another token for someone else, and then the token manager will then say, now there's 2 people who hold tokens. Just wait a little bit for Ethereum. Do some dancing.
So right now there are thousands of computers deciding if they want to include this transaction or not.
Exactly. So a funny story actually, on Rinkeby, the gas limit was at 7 million when we first launched this. In about 2 or 3 weeks, we pushed that limit up to like 7.5 because we were taking up entire blocks in Rinkeby. Ooh, it worked! All right, if you go back now, it's gonna show up. So now there's a vote. It said token manager, it minted 1 token for this address. It went through because we were the only people. Now if we go back to the token manager, wait for IPFS. Now we have 2 people, and one of them is you, and the other person is whoever that address belonged to. Now, this is where it gets interesting because we still have 50% of the power over this organization because there's only 2 tokens. One belongs to us. If you go to token holder stakes, zoom in, Jorge, bottom right, you see we both have 50%. So we can still, either of us unilaterally, make decisions on behalf of this organization. But if we mint another token to somebody else, that will stop. We'll both be at 33, well, all 3 of us will be at 33%. And then afterwards, every other decision we start to make, we'll have to have at least 2 people sign, or like over 50% of people agree on that decision.
And this is very important. Right now, I just submitted a transaction to give five more tokens to this guy. Right now, we have lost complete control of our organization. There's no support to call. There's no one to call. This organization is no longer controlled by us, and that guy who owns a majority stake in the organization can do now whatever he pleases. So there's no advantage in being the creator if you give up the control of your token stake.
And the amazing thing is nobody can tell you what to do because, like, what you're going to do is stop Ethereum. All right, maybe while we wait for that, we'll go to finance. I should go to settings first. Yeah, so we have a few dummy test tokens on Ethereum Rinkeby to just show off what this might look like. Oh, skip break, sorry. I'm not going to do 30.
You could while the transaction is managed.
That would be awkward. Oh, MetaMask is breaking?
No,
Maybe we're on the net.
I
Right now.
wanted 5.
But dude, like, we had... Alright, so we'll wait a little bit for Ethereum to load. But basically this finance app tells you which tokens you have and how much they're worth. It's basically an accounting interface. When these token transfers do load, they're going to show up here soon.
You can see we have no tokens.
Yeah, we can't do anything yet because we have no tokens. Where are these transactions? Ooh, did they all just disappear? Or did they all just pass?
This is not that we are very bad programmers and not optimize this. This is slow. There's nothing you can do.
Oh, here we go. All right, awesome. We started getting these tokens. Oh, we have a lot of Maker, which is really awesome, and we have a lot of Maiden too, which is also awesome. And some other tokens. But you'll see here that we basically have said, like, inside this organization, now you have these funds. You've been paid out for this reason, and you have this amount of money to control. And then we can create outgoing payments to another address in case your organization needs to pay someone for contract work, for marketing, for holding an event, etc. But now, what's also going to be really interesting is that when we try to pay, we're not going to be able to do it yet because it's going to say, you have to create a vote. You don't have unilateral decision making over this organization. And we actually lost complete control over this organization, so there's no way for us to pay this person. If you go back to, we have to wait for the transaction, but if you go back to voting, it'll show up in about a minute, where basically we can't do anything with it now. We can't pay out of this out of this organization.
So is there a governance contract over this organization where you change your structure?
That is coming, yeah. So we don't really have a good way in UI to do that right now, and because it's really complex to show that state and to control it, but we're actively working on it. That's basically on our next thing in our roadmap, is a way for people to install their own apps and a way for people to control who has permission and what that permission looks like. Yeah, basically right now it's like stuck to a couple of templates that we have developed. Oh, here we go. So we're trying to pay this guy, but like we're only at 14% of the vote. We can't get 50 because some account somewhere else that we don't have the key. And yeah, we're stuck. Now this organization, well, it's controllable by the other person, basically. Cool. All right, so now we'll bring it back. I can go through, or what do you think? Not sure. All right. I had this set for the break, but we'll do it here instead. All right. Had to show that at least once. All right, so I'm just gonna go through technically quickly how that all showed up. So essentially what we saw on the left was a native application for the web. It was a React application. And on the right side, we had a whole bunch of iframes. Each app gets loaded in its own sandbox inside an iframe. And inside that iframe, oh, sorry, not inside that iframe, but outside of that iframe, we have background scripts for each of these apps that get loaded from that application so that they can talk to state inside an Ethereum contract. So there's kind of like two layers, right? We have the background, we have the Ethereum backend in each of the contracts that are deployed for each application that then go through a script that caches the state and then sends that through to the front end, through the iframe, to display that state to a user. And of course, the front end is all loaded, the scripts and everything are all loaded from IPFS, so this is fully decentralized. And I'll give it up to Jorge to talk about what's next.
Thanks. So what Brett showed us is like, this is like zero science fiction right now. This is one of the most complex, more complete, and also more decentralized apps out there. There's a bit of centralized infrastructure that we're holding right now, but like users could like run all that locally and be able to have that same experience. So there's no reliance on us having any MongoDB servers or any weird infrastructure. It's all, if we go away tomorrow, people will be able to still run their organizations in the exact same way, and we have no control over that. But like, what's next? Of course, there's a lot of work that we're still doing in Aragon core, a lot of stuff that needs to be polished for this to be a very interesting tool for people to run their organizations. This is only like the first step in the roadmap that we explained when we did our first version of our white paper a year ago, actually. So 1 year ago, we already had like 0.3. We had an idea that this was possible, even though we wanted to improve it technically quite a bit. But we knew that what we would want to, where we were going to go, is eventually to the Aragon network. Because right now, what you just saw is like it's just a very smart contract. But it's just a smart contract. It's very hard for people to think, okay, how can I really use this? This is a question that we're getting a lot, like, okay, this is cool, this is like very nice, but how can I interact with this with the real world? Like, we have two answers for this. The first answer is there will be ways for you to have like a real world organization that gets linked to a DAO, but then the long-term answer, what we're really focusing on right now, is like there will be no need for the real world because the Aragon network will be a real-world jurisdiction, even though it will be digital. There will be where you will be able to do business as well as in the real world. So there will be no need for interacting with real jurisdictions because this will be a full-on jurisdiction. So this is actually the tagline, the big tagline of the project. What are we doing? We're doing all this for creating tools to empower and freedom and enable decentralized governance. And this is what the Aragon network really is. Like it's this is super difficult. Opt-in, non-violent, free to join, true limited liability, digital jurisdiction, allows sovereign individuals, organizations, or protocol to create value with without intermediaries.
Should try wrapping that.
Yeah, that would be cool. And what's really that? Like this true limited liability, we really like talking about this. It's like your liability to the network and what the network, this common shared jurisdiction can do to you. It's always clear at any point. Like there's no, because if you run a traditional company, you can have like, you can have some criminal complaints and you can go to jail for basically the entire life, even though you're operating a limited liability company. If you can go to jail forever, that's really not limited liability. Also, there will be something that is very good about traditional jurisdictions is that if there's an issue in the, or a breach of contract, you know that you can go to a higher entity that will be able to solve the issue for you. These mechanisms are not really great. There's a lot of ways to influence or like to trick the system. If you have more money than others, you can basically buy the other person in legal fees so that you will win a conflict because like they cannot continue paying for lawyers. There's a lot that we can do to make it more fair. And now in terms of our particular organization, we want to transition all our power, all the foundation power to this DAO that will be a completely sovereign entity over the funds. This is an ongoing process. We're now transitioning the foundation to another legal jurisdiction to make this transition easier, but this is something that we really want to do in the next years. And like AMT holders will be able to govern this jurisdiction. And then there's also this other thing that we're working on now is the concept of sub-networks that we won't have time to go into it today, but there will be other crypto networks and protocols that will be able to thrive and they will be able to pull a lot of functionality from the Aragon network if they become a sub-network. That will mean at the core is like having those other crypto networks back with AMT to some extent. But we'll go more on that soon. This is like what the Aragon network really, like the current version of the Aragon network is going to look like. There's going to be a huge staking pool. Well, different entities in the network will stake their AMT, and that box right there, that's your limited liability. That's the only thing that the Aragon network can control over your organization. Nothing else that it's not there, you cannot control. And then, of course, you can stake your tokens. There will be some stuff that happens if you also stake your tokens, but basically if you stake your tokens, what you can do is our Aragon network agreements in which you basically can have like two parties that make an agreement and say, okay, I'm going to make an agreement with this other party inside this pool, but the good thing is that you don't need to collateralize each agreement individually because you can do it out of your pool in your stake funds in the Aragon network, and also means that you don't need, like, if you have like 1,000 AMT at stake, but you may have agreements in which like, you are actually going to have like 5,000 AMT at stake. Everyone can know and see this information and decide whether they take the risk or not, and see what the risk of you going away is. Of course, if you enter in an agreement, this minimum liability parameter, those tokens are locked until the agreement is solved. And this is like a very, very silly example that we have of SDAO and ADAO that could totally be Apple and Samsung, that they enter into an agreement to deliver 10 million OLED screens, and then there's a payment there with more tokens than the entire AMT token supply, so I don't know what I was thinking about there. And then they have a min liability of 5,000 AMT, a max liability of 10,000 AMT. That means that no matter what Samsung or Apple do, they can only, like the parties can only have like 10K AMT removed from their balance. Then there's an issue because like only 5 million OLED screens are delivered, like you can go to the arbitration court, then like an entire mechanism happens there that we don't have time to go into that right now, and we're doing heavy research still. And then the network makes a decision, and what it decides is that ADAO will get 3,000 AMT from SDAO, and that's the only part that the court can have an effect on. And you can imagine this as a tree of jurisdictions in which you can get into an agreement with anyone from another network if there's a path with the other network. If this happens and Aragon becomes used for these collateralized agreements, and there's interest and use for this, we believe that AMT could become the world's first currency for economic development, because like all those tokens that are staked in that pool can still be used for governance of the DAO. So this like basically becomes like, if you put any other currency, even in a stable coin, it's not as good because you lose the opportunity to also cover the network and its values. This is something that we're working on. We're focusing again a lot in the Aragon network now. We have a new white paper that is coming out soon. We're not giving out dates, but we're like pretty happy with how it's starting to look, and we'll have something on the new white paper soon. And kind of to finish, who are we and who are doing this crazy project? This is what the Aragon office looked a year ago. It was like me, our friend Adri that did the amazing logo, and then Luis. And this is like how the team looks right now. We're 13 people spread all over the globe, a bit concentrated in Europe and North America. We have only one person living in Spain. This is something important. There's some people that would think we're a Spanish startup or whatever. Like we're headquartered in Zug, Switzerland right now. We just moved there, and we're probably going to open an office there soon. Shameless plug, we're hiring for React UI engineers. If you know how to do React or UI, please check out wiki.aragon.one/jobs. We're nice people. We have a pretty big community. We have an interesting chat at Aragon.chat with over 20k token holders right now and 60,000 Twitter followers. And kind of like a flashback to the start of my presentation, or like that we are creating tools to really make decentralized governance and power happen. We're actually like doing this ourselves. This blog post about decentralizing Aragon's development. We kind of explained the plan of having more than just our team that is called Aragon 1, because we're the first team developing in Aragon, to hire more teams, for the network to hire more teams to work on Aragon, rather than growing the team to 700 people because of everything that we need to do. We also have a fun movie that it's too long to play here, but if you haven't watched, you should totally search for Aragon: The Fight for Freedom. And yeah, that's all we have. Hope you enjoyed our joint live set. Yeah, thank you. If you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, very nice presentation. Next up, to conclude the evening, to conclude the afternoon, is QJ from MakerDAO. And QJ was kind enough to bring some goodies from the Maker team, some hats, some stickers, some t-shirts, limited edition. So first come, first serve.
It's very limited because we've been doing a tour around Asia since April, and so basically everybody is fighting for it. There's stickers on the phone for your cars, and it says "Live free and die hard," which is the only nice thing we can come up with anything like close to die, like die what. So we were really struggling with good phrase, but I think this one is pretty cool. And then there's hats, not many, since Brett just took one of the 5 that I took. Very good. And some t-shirts. I think the t-shirts is not bad because what it says is I'm unstable with my diet, so in Chinese like 我很浪，但是我的代很稳。Something like that. But, so I'm from, I grew up in Shanghai. I'm Chinese, so I'll be able to speak in Chinese. Even the blockchain terms are difficult. But so I want to do a bit like short survey of whether there are more people who would prefer me to do it in Chinese language. Minority, sorry. Let's do it the democracy or POW way. Since there are so many people that already know Maker very well, I also had this presentation for like 1 million times, so I want to do it a bit of a different way, which is probably to ask the audience, like, what are the things about MakerDAO that you don't get very well so far? And probably then in the presentation I can do it in a more targeted way than just like go through every detail that are not so important. So with that being said, I probably can take like 2-3 questions so that I can just, no? Okay, yeah, please.
Go.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just curious how the CDPs get refilled.
Okay. What do you mean by refill?
Oh, because I mean as Ether price goes down, it
Like
needs to be
how do you deal
collateral.
with them? Like
Yeah.
CDPs, okay.
Like
Who
who recollateralizes the CDPs?
Okay, understand. So we will definitely go through that because it's a very important mechanism to make sure that there are enough collaterals to back DAIs out there. But in short, it's a design mechanism to ask people to buy bad debts to recycle the DAIs. But we will go through it shortly. So I also another short survey. How many of you actually paid for a service using Bitcoin or Ether? Okay, 3, 4, 5, right? And that's what we are claiming or we contend to say the biggest problem of the cryptocurrencies these days is that it's unstable, and so the real world and the real business cannot really use them. And when you are telling your mom like how much I'm making these days, and you're saying like 2 Bitcoin, and she's like, so how much is that? Like how many houses can we buy? Right? You have to have some ways to do the accounting, which is why we need something that is not only that it has to be stable in price, so that the real world can accept it. Or in the case of Aragon, right? You guys were using some contractors, and like if they are real world contractors, they will be like, I don't know where to convert Ether, or in my jurisdiction, I probably need to pay a lot of taxes, or I just don't want tomorrow it becomes like much less. Or in the cases of your private home lives, if you want to keep money away from your wife, right? Bitcoin is not so ideal because then every now and then you need to check how much it's worth now. And in a crash market, you'll be like trying to get the funds out and go to exchanges and do a lot of stuff. Which is why we think the most important thing for blockchain to go mass market, to go into the mass adoption, is that it has to be very stable in price. And all these decentralized applications, these wonderful projects like Gnosis, where people are betting things, you don't want to bet on one thing at the same time, you have to also bet on the price of the tokens that you're betting with, right? And also with the Melonport. And when fund managers are raising funds, you're raising Ether, and this happens so much, so severely during the time when China mainland had the big bang, the bang hammer with ICO projects. So the whole market started to crash, and the projects don't have enough funds in their hands to even pay back. Or worst case scenario, they sold the Ether, and the Ether came back in price. And the government is asking people to actually give back the funds, and no investors would actually accept much less than they have invested in terms of the number of Ether. So we all are experienced ever since I started to join blockchain industry in 2014. There was so much volatility that we are just so calm these days. It's like they will come back. Right? No, they will come back. They are good projects, only if they are good projects, right? So what is Maker? Since nobody was asking this question, that we will just simply put it that what we designed for the past 3 years. MakerDAO is actually the oldest DAOs, one of the oldest. I think it's even prior to the DAO, which ruined the name for us, and we would have chosen differently for sure. We want to ensure stability, and we call the stablecoin project crown projects in the blockchain industry. And in my words, I think it's just a simple mortgage platform for anybody to really engage with. This is why I think it's very essential for you guys to understand this project, because it's a very useful tool that you can try just tonight if you are some sort of a trader. And so we created the first ever decentralized stablecoin. We understand stablecoin mostly if you are relatively new to a blockchain or trading from, for example, USDT. Like, it's something that you sell it to. When the market is crashing, you should not sell Bitcoin to Ether because probably correlate all the time. So people use USDT. The problem with it is it's centralized. I mean, crypto people like decentralization. That's all we've been talking about. It removes the counterparty risks. You don't have to worry that whether there are banks in Taiwan and in the other regions will be seized by by the government, or whether they have legal issues with the SEC and stuff like this, because it's not going to be in your hands to control. So being decentralized, we are transparent. You can see that there are really collaterals behind that are locked and not controlled by anybody else but the blockchain. And at the same time, the number of the circulation that is out there is really checkable and trustworthy because it's on blockchain. So right now we are pegged to $1, but in the future it won't be just the US dollar. We're considering a lot of jurisdictions, but at the same time we're trying to keep us low key because we also want to stay stronger before we get to be out there. And so with that being said, it's not really just like a trust-based currency. It's an asset-backed. This goes to the mechanism. So right now, if you go to DAI.MakerDAO.com, you'll see, or just like in general Etherscan and stuff, then you'll be able to see that for one DAI, there is at least $3 of Ether that is backing it, which means you don't need to worry so much when whether DAI would lose its value. And we already announced the cooperation with Digix, so in the future it won't be just cryptocurrency tokens that are essentially security-looking, security-designed sort of tokens to be on the underlying collaterals. They will also be assets that are much more stable to be introduced, and then housing, and then like lending platforms, contracts, and real estate and supply chain finance receivables, all of these things that can be introduced in the collateral, which will happen in very soon in June, July. Our multi-collateral, so right now you can only go there and put your Ether there and take that DAI. And in the future, you'll be able to do it with all the other tokens that the token, the MakerDAO, DAO, the decentralized autonomous organizations, keepers, choose to select. So it won't be like any shady tokens that can be the collaterals in order to maintain the possibility of being stable in the first place. So as I introduced, in the beginning, people can just use it as one DAI. There are more and more exchanges that are choosing DAIs over all the other stable tokens that are function designed in other ways. So Bitfinex recently started to let people deposit DAIs to purchase all the other tokens. And we also recently announced the launch of OSS Direct. So it's not the OSS decentralized exchange anymore, but one that is decentralized. But you can just within 2 blocks time get any token from Ether, Maker, and DAI. Like if you don't want to really use your Ether as mortgage it, then you can just sell your Ether in this way to get DAI. So how does that work? Let's go to the details so that we have more peaceful mind when we are using it. Essentially, it's like mortgaging your house. You put your Ether for this stage into a collateralized debt position, which doesn't matter, it's just a smart contract. You put it there, and then you get, so it's a smart contract, you put Ether inside, and then it's locked, nobody can touch it, and you get DAI, right? And if you use that DAI to do investment or buy that Porsche you've been wanting for so long, right? And then you make investment return, either in the sense of getting bigger profits in other tokens, or the Porsche that got the rich chick gave you more money, right? You make some profits, and then you can how do you get your Ether back? How do you get your house back? Is by paying back the DAI that you took as loans, and then a small percentage of the service fees for rewarding the people that are keeping the MakerDAO platform so well. And that for now is 0.5% annual interest rate, which is significantly lower than all the other lending services that you can consider.
So one DAI is guaranteed by 3 Ether?
For the current status, yes. And our requirement is it at least is guaranteed by $1.5, but then it's super.
How do you calculate it?
I'll go to that because this is how we actually are able to maintain the stability of the DAIs out there, and how fast our mechanism, our system can react to a very fast crash in the market. So then you get your Ether back and you keep all the profits that you made, right, with the investment. And this I already said, it's like a mortgage. So if you think of it as like a pawn shop, like then you'll be able to, let me go back a little bit. So you definitely cannot get more than what your house is worth, because the bank needs to count in the liquidation costs when it really comes down to a debt. So the ratio, as I said, is 1.5. So in terms of like $100 worth of Ether you put in there, you'll be able to get $66.66 of DAI, which is also that number of the DAIs. But that's a very, very risky thing to do, because this is the threshold, actually the debt ceiling, which means if Ether drops like just slightly, even if it goes back, you will have a problem with your asset being flagged as something that is biteable in our mechanism, which goes back to how the CDPs are actually cleared. So when the asset is flagged as a biteable asset, which means it's under collateralized, people can actually go to that platform and buy back that Ether with actually 13% discount. So this creates a big margin trade, arbitrage trading profits to incentivize a lot of people to keep recycling the DAIs out there to purchase back the Ether. Because the margin is so big, so there are already a lot of bots working on the platform. At the beginnings, there are still opportunities for people to actually engage with it. So what we are doing essentially is to make sure there is enough collateral that is backing the DAIs out there, and when it happens, it's not this case, then it's incentivizing people to give back the DAIs, so that the DAIs out there are always backed. Well, this is an easy explanation of that's how you can do margin trading by taking out DAIs and do other investment. So I actually already explained the liquidation process. It would be a discounted 打折出售, right, on sale. Like you just see this Ether is on sale compared with the prices in the market. And the CDB holders would have the leftover collateral. Actually, you also have another choice, which is to put more collateral into it to maintain a more safe CDP, the level of the debt. And then we would ask if people are challenging the system that what if, for example, today Ether dropped like so significantly, and the market and even the keepers and the people that are buying bad debts are not able to keep up with the speed. So our calculation is that in a system of ours, it can withstand 70% sudden market crash. This is a number that never really happened in the history of crypto. And since last year summer, the beta version of DAI
You
came
never
out.
know.
What?
You will never know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So because this number never even happened closely, and even if it happens, we have a mechanism to save it. Thank you for asking. We were about to talk about this, which is another token that is in the market. It's called. So this is a dashboard of DAI. We can go there. It's on maker.com, and it's very easy to see that the collaterals are over collateralized. So what we were saying with the 70% sudden crash, it's even with just at the threshold of 150% collateralized. With 300, we are much safer, and with the empirical experience we had since last year, it was always very stable. You have a bit of the market adjustment, but it's always at $1 US. And even in the case of a very, very big black swan that we never know would or would not happen, the people that are holding makers, that are adjusting the specifications of the smart contracts on MakerDAO.com, they have been doing all this work, and they are rewarded by the burnt stability fees that people need to pay when they want to free their Ether back. These are the people that are the biggest stakeholders of the platform. they get the rewards. At the same time, if the market fails, in the case of Black Swan, Maker will be inflated. So it's sort of like a punishment, but it's also one way to save the system. So if you're like, you didn't do a good job with maintaining the platform, you have to inflate your own value, the properties, in order to keep the market very safe, which makes the incentive very aligned. So they have to keep an eye, which is why Maker is not having very great liquidity in the markets. It's not like the general public can withstand the idea of the tokens without a fixed number of circulation. At the same time, there's a lot of work to do when the next round of our voting system comes around, when people have to actively vote and look at what collaterals to be introduced and at which rate should these collaterals be introduced and given DAIs out and stuff like this. It will be a lot of work, great return, and it's not so easy to become the shareholder of a World Bank anyway. So we're saying that there's a mechanism of collaterals and also a mechanism of endangering the stakeholders' property in order to save the market. And our ultimate goal is that DAI is not going to be just like one token that is pegged to one economy, one jurisdiction. This is not going to serve the goal of having really a stable coin. Plus, the asset that we are putting into the collateral box is not only tokens or assets that are confined by one jurisdiction, right? You have Ether, which is crossing borders, and all the other tokens as well. So DAI would eventually aim to become one accounting unit that people just use. Like in the movie of Guardians of the Galaxy, you just talk about, I'll send you 10,000 units, and the unit will become DAI, which is our dream here. And at the same time, we have a second tier token that is DAI USD, DAI Euro, that is easier for specific markets to use. This I already explained, maybe it's the wrong order, I should put it earlier. So you have the management risk, you have also the makers being the bailout instrument, and then at the same time you earn returns. So the more DAI is accepted out there in the world, the more maker holders would be rewarded for playing this very interesting game. And overall, because Maker is only like, there's only $1 million, we never did an ICO. It had a price at the day one because when the core team was still working on Bishia, they had this idea already designed, and then they moved on to Ethereum because with the smart contracts and all the other wonderful projects, you have much more collaterals to be put. That's why you diversify the risks. At the same time, there will be much more applications to use DAI for mass adoption sort of goal. And overall, because makers are being burnt as a service fee, you have much less. And in the case of a bad debt, like a Black Swan and stuff, when it's inflated, it still won't, we hope, not go back to the 1 million supply. So keeping Maker is not a bad deal, but it's for advanced users. How does the DAI benefit the blockchain ecosystem apart from what we discussed? It will be a real medium of exchange. So coffee shops now can use it. There are supply chain finance that are using it. We are also actively investing in these projects that are helping to put collaterals, assets and tokens onto blockchain so that we can keep them as collaterals, right? And so you can buy coffee now with DAI. It's more likely that the coffee sellers would accept DAI than accept Bitcoin because it's stable and they don't want to handle the risks. So at least, and then it's stable and transparent, which is a safe way of keeping your values. And margin trading, as I already discussed. And so this is an interesting point because DAI would, we think, substantially help with the Formula Beta ICO. This was put forward by Vitalik. He was saying that with smart contract, people can actually use it to confine the power of the projects. If they're not really performing very well, then people can have some sort of voting system to claw back the money they gave and decide like, whether they have a bigger budget this month or a smaller budget next month. But if you are using Ether or all the other tokens that would grow with the system to be the fund that is locked down in a smart contract, you have a big risk of not outrunning Ether's price. like if your token is not growing so fast as Ether, then the community has an incentive to act evilly to take back the money, which is why it's important to introduce a stablecoin into this way of raising funds, not only for traditional fundraising methods. So DAICO is what Vitalik proposed some days earlier, and we are also putting up $45 million in the hands of L4 to invest in projects that are going to help with facilitating the usage of DAI and in all these aspects, also via channels and remittance systems, all these things that would boost the use of DAI and also help people to just use blockchain generally much better. We also just recently joined the Ethereum Community Fund as a funding member to help with the general infrastructure boosting. So in all these channels, you'll be able to find us. It's our community has been there for 3 years, so not super active because most of us are like on styles working on it, and we just have come out very recently. And these are the places where you can get DAIs if you're interested. One is OS Direct. As I mentioned, it's a way to just decentralizedly doing it on blockchain. This is actually the address of the website. And OTC Maker is a newly launched place where you can use it as like local Ethereum, just basically if you're currency versus DAI, if you want to convert. And all these exchanges, and then if you want to really use the collateral, the mortgage platform, you go to dai.makerdao.com. And I don't know how many people use WeChat in Taiwan. I did not do much research on that. But if you do, this is the WeChat public account. We do very active translations of blogs and also partnerships and potential use cases. If you own a business, you can use and integrate with MakerDAO. At the same time, there's just like one short recap. $1 $1 for now, and the annual interest rate is as low as you can imagine. Basically, it's free money, and that's my email address. So if there's any like business development needs, or if you want to inquire whether it's possible to use MakerDAO for your project, or get funding from Stable Fund and Ethereum Community Fund, I'm your access to it. Thank you very much. Sorry, if anybody wants hats and all these cool shirts, you can come to me in the audience seats. Thank you.
Thank you, QJ. Are there any questions for QJ? Yeah, you first and you.
Yeah, just about the fee for the CDPs. There's 0.5% annual paid in Maker tokens.
Yes,
right?
in Maker tokens.
And is there any plan of updating that fee in the future?
There should be. Actually, the interest, my personal interest is push it to negative. Like, so you actually, when you hold DAIs, you would be able to actually have more DAIs when the market uses it. So I don't think we would create much friction in the near future for people to use it. It's small, very small circulation at this point. There's like, last time I checked, like $25 million of DAI, much less than what a big exchange would require, and also like big industry trading. But it's also because we're trying to slow down before the multi-collateral DAI is coming out for bigger testing. And this is as much, we can go still higher, as much as the foundation's money can cover if the market fails. I mean, our team would be able to buy it back if there is something wrong with it. So after June, July, you'll see a big boost in the number of DAI out there. No?
DAI is backed by the collateralized cryptocurrencies.
Yes, yes.
But is it possible for DAI to provide a fiat gateway? Because, for example, if I collect DAI by selling coffees, I still need to convert to fiat to, for example,
yes,
paying salaries or buying.
Yes, rent, food, girlfriend's gifts.
Yeah, because,
Exactly.
because right now cryptocurrencies are still not widely accepted.
Yes.
So is it possible for
Yeah,
that?
so right now we already have one gateway, which is called the OTC Maker. This is it's otcmaker.com. So there is one website in our ecosystem has already done it. And you're right, we need to open much more channels than that, and our team efforts also goes into US to have a very licensed, just like one desk, banco, right? Just one desk, you can just convert, and we handle all the risk ourselves. On the other note is that's why we also need to push forward DAI's adoption much more aggressively. If more people start to accept DAI, there would be less point in having to convert it into other fiat currencies. And it's much easier to keep it to yourself. There's all the other benefits that Bitcoin lived up to or was trying to promise. So there will be more channels, and there is already one. Not sure that it's a big market for Taiwan yet. It's now it's targeting Chinese RMB and US dollar.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Yeah, because you accept multiple kind of collateral in the future. Yeah, so if you accept the house token, how can Oracle to define the price of this house?
It's a very good point because even for Ether, right, we need to decide. Also, this question was addressed to Gnosis too. Like, how do we trust the Oracle, like for the feed of the price?
My question is that I trust your Oracle to present the price of the Ether because it's come from an exchange.
Yes.
But if
which is not a reason to trust them. It has to be a very good selection of good exchanges and all the other. It's a lot of work there. I understand it will be much more complicated with like real world assets too. With gold, it's much easier. There's very mature international trading, so it won't be difficult to find out about the price of gold. Digix is a much easier choice. With housing, it will be much more difficult for sure. That's why we give returns to people who are holding makers and or other people that are doing the keepers work in the MakerDAO platform. This I have not elaborated much, but in terms of like choosing what asset to be introduced, these are the people that need to also consider the problem when they have to liquidate it. So in the future, it will be a voting system. For example, if we have a lot of keepers that are based in Taiwan and they know the ways of liquidating it, and they have their own ways of doing it very fast, they will be voting for introducing housing in Taiwan to become the assets. Then of course we probably have to invest in these projects that are doing this asset tokenization sort of process, applications and stuff. And it's right, so we cannot really just introduce a collateral once it has one price in one exchange. It has to be a fairly competitive market, and I would say it could be, like Anson said, it will be happening much faster than we think. And once the tokens are out there will be places where you can trade in Dutch X, in all these decentralized exchanges. Once they're tokenized, it will be much easier because that's the only way we kind of can do the collateralization. And once it's tokenized, it will be much easier for people to trade it. And of course, we cannot just trust one exchange, one source. We have to see a lot of things, and it's not only a decision it's not a decision can be made only by our team. It's a decision made in a community, which is the essence of a DAO. And they have to think about the consequences of allowing such collateral to be introduced, because they will be the ones that will have to buy the assets and sell them and do stuff. So I think we figured out the mechanism and the flow very well, but it's not something we can single-handedly control. It's very spread out. So that's why we are looking for partners and also announcing water partnerships and even investing and financing such projects that can help us for all these things. Thank you.
I think I have a last question actually.
You're getting embarrassed.
Actually, it's funny because in Melon we discussed it, and I think we decided that we're going to use DAI as a reference currency for a portfolio, exactly because it's not so volatile, but unrelated. So my question is, you showed that currently the overall collateralization is over 300%. And my question is, does it affect me personally? Because my collateralization limit is 150%. Does it matter if the overall is 300 or 200 or 1,000, or doesn't affect me?
It doesn't affect you at all. It's just for, it's like preemptively putting more assets there in the case of a crash of the market. So as long as, even if it drops like below 150, which is the threshold, you will still be able to have very stable DAI and completely in control of it, because all the other DAIs would be sold back to people who are actively doing the trading for this discounted Ether and all the other tokens. It's just so that you are sort of, the reason why it's so over collateralized is that there are so many people that are putting $300 of Ether, but only taking out $100 of DAI, in order so that they would not have to get punished for risky mortgaging. So it's more because of this sort of behavior, which is something we encourage too. I mean, like with all the tokens that correlate in prices, it's especially in early stage, I think it's much safer to do it this way.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, and for hats and shirts and other stuff.
Oh, we have one more question actually. Let's do one more question.
I just want to ask a question about the stable fund.
Yes.
So, me and a friend actually applied to it. We're wondering what the response time
You already applied?
Yeah, a few weeks
And there's no response?
The last, maybe like 3 weeks ago, we applied.
3 weeks ago. Can you also email me with your project and the introduction and stuff?
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Okay, yeah, so I can also forward to it. My email is here, today at MakerDAO.
Okay, thank you.
And it's covered.
You finished.
Okay, then I can.
I mean，就是今天的会就到这边，然后大家后面有饮料，然后我们这边大概接大概还有10几分钟、20分钟可以用这样。